Welcome into the official Colts podcast. I'm Jeffrey Gorman, joined today by JJ Stankevitz from Colts.com. He covers the team better than anyone. Lara Overton, who also does a heck of a job covering this football team. She's on assignment today. We'll welcome her back next week. JJ, the biggest news around the league right now is all these coaching hires. We see defensive coordinators being hired around the NFL, and specifically here in Indianapolis. Lou Anarumo presented at his press conference to the media, hey, here I am, and this is what I'm planning to bring to this defense. Your takeaways, what do you think about Lou Anarumo so far?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into some of this stuff, too, in the sit-down we got.
I'm sorry about that. I didn't even mention that.
Yeah.
We have Lou Anarumo coming up with JJ. Yep. Sorry about that.
Lou sitting right in that chair.
Yep.
Coming up here in a little bit. But I think just my biggest takeaway from Lou is that his whole philosophy is to make things difficult on opposing quarterbacks through disguising stuff. Changing the look pre-snap, dropping guys who you don't expect to be dropping. And he also is a guy who keeps a play call in his back pocket. Like, it's the fourth quarter, and I've had this one sitting there, and all of a sudden, bam, here it comes. And look no further than what the Chiefs did to the Bills, where you got Steve Spagnuolo throwing the most wicked curveball you can possibly get on 4th and 5. To win that game,
right? To
confuse Josh Allen and that Bills offensive line. That right there, look, Lou Anarumo is that is where his philosophy lies. It's not necessarily going to be you're running cover 0 every time or you're dropping 7 into coverage every time. There are going to be change-ups in there, and then he's got that one call that, hey, if the situation calls for it, let's go run it here and expect that it's going to work. Again, I think what the Chiefs did is a really good example of sort of not – you're in the same ballpark of philosophy as Lou Anarumo there.
And so that kind of describes why, some of his peers and players and whatnot have called him, the mad scientist, and even Lou Dini. It's for stuff like that. Let's not forget the run that they had when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they were great.
He was shutting down some quarterbacks right there, and that's one of the, the biggest bright spots on his resume.
Yeah, and what I think when you get into those games where you need help, essentially, when you're facing the best quarterbacks in the league, to make it through the AFC, you're going through Mahomes, Lamar, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. Those are the kind of caliber of quarterbacks you're going through. You have to change the picture on them, and that's something he emphasized in his press conference. That's something we talked about in the sit-down we're going to get to here. You got to change the picture on those guys because they are too good. They will sit back, and they will pick you apart if you don't do anything to at least make them think for a split second on a play.
All right, let's introduce you now to the Colts' new defensive coordinator, just sitting down with JJ Stankevitz not too long ago. Here's Lou Anarumo.
All right, pleased to welcome to the official Colts podcast the new defensive coordinator of the Indianapolis Colts, Lou Anarumo. Lou, thanks for taking some time, and I kind of want to dive into just sort of like your background and your philosophy and how you teach things. And right before we started recording, I just sort of brought up, you got your start as a part-time head coach at the Merchant Marine Academy, which, I don't know, can you explain what the Merchant Marine Academy is?
So Kings Point, it's one of the 5 federal academies. I sound like I'm doing my recruiting pitch again, but 5 federal academies, and the guys we would only get them for half the year because half of the year they would go out to sea and do their travel time on the ships and stuff. So, but I still talk to some of those guys today. It was a great learning experience. Met Joe Philbin there, who went on to become the head coach of the Dolphins. Joe and I worked together for a year. I was there for 3 years. Met some great people, and it was a great place to start. I was a GA at Syracuse under Coach Pasqualoni, and then ended up that was my first full-time job at Merchant Marine.
I think it's like a great life lesson that you never know who might help you out someday. So just, be nice to everyone, be kind to everyone. You met Joe Philbin there, who wound up hiring you when he got the head coaching job in Miami. I believe you also coached with him at Harvard.
We did, yeah.
Just like you've been coaching now for 37 years. If you're speaking to someone who's just starting off in this business, what would you kind of tell them off of that experience about how to make connections and just how to kind of be a young person getting going in this business?
I think I love the way it came up in coaching because I started, high school and then on to being a graduate assistant and then to Division III, then to 1AA, then to major college football at Purdue. So kind of took steps along the way. I think all along I wanted that to accelerate, but I'm so happy that's the way my path was, because you learn more what to do and what not to do in those situations when you're dealing with different players that have different skill sets, and you can apply all that stuff as now coaching in the NFL all these years. And I draw back on all those experience from each particular place all the time.
So let's talk about before you got to Purdue. What did you learn about how to teach with limited time at the Merchant Marine Academy with kids at Harvard who are probably running companies at this point in their lives?
They are.
And the challenges of maybe learning in those environments of how to teach your philosophy and get it to be applied out on the field.
No, it's a great question. As you mentioned, you go Merchant Marine where you don't have time crunch, Harvard where kids are time crunch from a school standpoint, then on to Marshall, with its own challenges in terms of times and restrictions, and then to Purdue. So, I think again, that's what I was talking about earlier, where you just learn to adapt and how, you're trying to get your coaching points across, get your scheme taught in a timely manner. And, in college, there's restrictions on times. I guess it's different now. I don't know. But, the good news in the NFL, you don't have those. But the way individuals learn, each guy's going to be different, and again, we can draw back on all those as we go through things now.
Who do you count as maybe your the most influential people in your life as a teacher? I know your dad, Lou Sr., was a teacher. I believe I read that.
He was, principal of an elementary school for 100 years. So, my mom worked in Parker Hall and Wagner College for years. So, my dad growing up was an educator for sure. And I would say, a number of guys in the NFL that have come across that have certainly helped shape who you are. You're always watching as a college coach, different things that are going on. I was fortunate enough to become friendly with Monty Kiffin over the years when, actually interviewed in Tampa. I was at Purdue, I was at Purdue at the time, and I think it was 2005. Probably wasn't ready to get the job.
Was that when Mike Tomlin got hired away?
So
as
Mike
DB's
was
coach?
Mike left, but Raheem left to go be the defense coordinator at Kansas State, and so that Mike had left I think a year or two prior, and then Raheem left to go to that job, so it opened up, and it was just a great experience for me to interview in front of John Gruden and Rich Bisaccia, Joe Barry, all the guys that they had won the Super Bowl not too before that, and it was just a great experience for me. And then got to know Monty from there, and then met a whole bunch of different great coaches along the way, and but just the core philosophies of what he taught, how he taught defense, and it always comes down to the base fundamentals and running to the ball, tackling. That's never going to change in defensive football.
I read something that you said, I think it was maybe the Cincinnati Enquirer, about how you can, if the technique stays the same, you can kind of be flexible and versatile with the scheme around it.
Yeah.
What exactly do you mean by that?
I believe that to be true. I mean, if you're teaching, if I'm telling you, okay, that we call cover 3 and you play a technique, it's called thirds, all right? And we call that, black. That's the name of the coverage. Well, if I can come to you and say, hey, we're going to call this purple now, but you're still playing thirds, but maybe somebody else is doing a little something different. So you can change certain things around the scheme, but as long as you're not teaching somebody to play a whole different technique that they're not used to, then that's how you become multiple. The core techniques that each position has doesn't change, but maybe in the way you do them is a little bit different. That can create some, we're always trying to play with keep the other quarterback offset and keep him out of sync, and that's one of the ways you do it, especially with these top quarterbacks we have in the AFC.
How do you kind of balance then, if that's sort of your philosophy, it sounds maybe straightforward and simple, but how do you balance teaching it so guys can still play fast while, hey, we're calling black, but you're playing purple, or we're calling black, but he's playing purple, and guys can still play fast with it?
I think it's I think the way we go, our approach is always going to be okay, we're going to start with our great foundation of core values that we have in terms of, again, playing with technique. If you're playing in the back end, you're going to play with leverage. Up front, playing blocks, keeping our gap integrity. But to your point, it's a gradual process. That's not going to happen the first week of OTAs. That'll be towards the end of the spring as we get into training camp, and now you're building momentum where we're going to pick up where we left off. I think those twists and turns come after you got the base stuff down. So let's learn black really good. Oh, by the way, we can do this with that coverage as well.
What lessons did you learn in 2019? That was your first year as a coordinator, about how to begin that process to implement your system with a new group of players that you'll now do again here
I
in
think,
Indy.
Great learning lessons, 19 and 20, kind of formulating exactly how we wanted to play with the players that we had, and end up, in 21 going to the Super Bowl. So, and even in 21, we had some new free agents, Mike Hilton, Trey Henderson, guys, Cheeto Awuzie. Those were core pieces that ended up getting us into the Super Bowl and back-to-back AFC championship games. So they were new to the system that year as well. So there was a little bit of a learning curve. But the core of the guys had learned it really from 19 and 20. So I think, haven't been through the process now. I think we've got it pretty fine-tuned to where it can be accelerated even faster. I'm looking forward to getting with the guys here and hitting the ground running.
So what do the next, call it 3 months, look like before players get in the building for you to kind of prepare for that moment?
Well, I think it's getting all the coaches in place. That's a process that we're going through now to finalize. I think we got to get ourselves on the same page first, get the coaches up to speed on how we want things done and how we're going to operate going forward, and then they'll be able to implement how we want to do things with the players.
One of the things that I when I kind of looked into your background and your just some of the numbers of what you did in Cincinnati, it looked like you ran a lot of simulated pressures with, that. So for our listeners, that's 4 guys rushing, but you don't know where they're coming from. It could be a D lineman dropping, you have a safety blitzing, whatever it might be. What's the goal of a simulated pressure? If obviously it's probably to get a sack or an interception, but on a quarterback, what does that do for a quarterback to try to confuse the guy in the pocket?
Yeah, so it starts with everything trying to look the same. So if you can do 3 or 4 different things pre-snap to the quarterback, it could be, as I just said, 3 or 4 different things. One going from 1 high to 2 high, or vice versa. One you're not blitzing, one you are blitzing. So there's a lot of things he has to process just based on, well, it looks like this, but it could be that. As soon as you can put that into, especially a young quarterback's mind, but even a veteran guy where they've got to, let's make them play quarterback. Let's not just make it easy for that guy to step on the center and know, hey, they're in this, hey, they're in that. We're the disguise and things like that. When we're at our best, that'll be something that we'll hang our hat on.
How did Joe Burrow help you kind of fine tune some of those things? I was listening to a podcast you did with Chris Long a couple years ago, where you mentioned you and Joe had a pretty good relationship, kind of a back and forth. He's obviously such a cerebral, smart quarterback. How did that kind of help hone that stuff?
Yeah, Joe is obviously who Joe is as a player. He's great individual as well. Comes from a great family. Jimmy, his dad, and I know each other for years. Jimmy used to coach at Ohio U, and when I was at Purdue, we would kind of go back and forth about, hey, we're playing Iowa next week, or through Monty Kiffin, because Jimmy was a Nebraska guy and Monty was a Nebraska guy. So I had known the Burrow family way before Joe Burrow became Joe Burrow. So, but to your question, Joe wants to kind of know. So like when we're going against each other in OTAs and training camp, I would go to him, hey, did you see that blitz coming? Did you see we were rolling a 2 or whatever I question had, or he would come to me and say, that was hard. I didn't see that. It was more that he usually didn't say that. He definitely didn't usually say that too often, but he said that could be challenging, and we would kind of go back and forth a little bit. But I've always done that wherever I've been with the quarterbacks. I want to know, my year in New York with Eli, just did you see that? Just as a DB coach, Byron Leftwich in college, Kyle Orton in college, every Ryan Tannehill down in Miami, just asking those guys their opinions, because they're the ones that you're trying to fool. And if they see it coming in practice, and what makes you think they're not going to see it during the game?
Mm-hmm.
So we take things, I listen to what those guys say, and adjust it as accordingly.
How is your sort of coverage, or like the menu of things you can play? How did that evolve over your time in Cincinnati? Because I think I looked and you were no lower than maybe 22nd in terms of a certain coverage, just from like Pro Football Focus, so take the numbers with what you will, but
Sure.
no lower than like 22nd, but maybe no higher than 5th in like any single coverage, whether it was cover 1, 2, 3 quarters, quarter, half, stuff like that.
I think it's important that if you don't change it up on the quarterback these days, it's going to be hard to, just to keep those guys contained, especially, the dynamic receivers you have to play. I mean, just coming from Cincinnati, having to defend T and Jamar every day in practice. And then, oh, by the way, there's Mike Gesicki too, so there's always going to be issues. And every week we're going to defend, elite receivers, sometimes one, sometimes two, then a great tight end, So it always starts and stops with me and saying, all right, how are we going to affect the quarterback, number one, and then try to limit the production of their top players. And, everybody says that, but there's got to be intent in how you do that and how you go about that. And I think part of that comes from being able to change how you cover guys.
With being in the AFC North, you get Lamar Jackson twice a year. You obviously have a history against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, Josh Allen. How much of the, you kind of, it's, someone put it as like, I know what you know, what I know, what you know thing kind of goes into that as you're scheming up these game plans specifically for these guys who have faced you, will know you. We'll get this in the AFC South now with CJ Stroud and Trevor Lawrence, just in terms of how you combat that. Like, I know what you're going to do, but you know what I'm going to do, and then you know what I'm going to do off of that.
Yeah, I think at some point there's all right, we're going to execute what, we really know that we can do well. And we also know it's been successful against them. Yes, they're probably practicing that, but maybe it looks just a little bit different than they're expecting because of slight disguise or whatever. And then sometimes it's just don't give them too much credit and let's see if they fixed it, because that's what they do to defenses. You'll see if you give up a play a week prior, you better have that issue fixed because the next team's probably going to check your oil and see if you got it fixed. So we're always conscious of that. And to me, if you're successful with something on defense, same thing. Let's see if they didn't block it this week. Let's see how they do next week with that.
You kind of were the king of that in the second half of the 2021 AFC Championship with dropping 8. I looked it up. I think it was on 12 plays after halftime, and no team in the playoffs has dropped 8 on more than 9 plays in the playoffs since.
Wow.
That like, as you've grown farther from that moment, it's been 4 years now, has like the gravity of it hit you? Of, that, like, people in Cincinnati point to that drop 8 as the reason why they got to experience a Super Bowl. Has that kind of hit you a little bit?
It was a great run. I think that we used that throughout the season. It just happened to go with the flow of the game. Like, I think that is something that, as a play caller, you may have this great sheet in front of you with some great ideas, and maybe it's not exactly playing out the way you thought. And to me, that's where you have to be able to be flexible enough to, change gears and say, all right, I thought I can make it up this hill in second gear, but let's drop it to first or whatever it may be. I think you have to be able to do that. And I think that game in particular, it was giving Patrick trouble, and that's a guy that you don't give much trouble to because he's such a great player. But we were able to do some different things at a zone and man, and we were spying him with Logan Wilson. And the biggest play in the game was a 3rd and 10 in overtime where we were playing a man-type coverage with a spy on him, and Jesse knocks the ball down, Vaughn Bell catches it, and the rest is history. But and the people don't realize is the 3rd down to get us into overtime.
So the Sam Hubbard play?
Yeah, it was 3rd and 8, and we showed a look that was a 5-down look, ended up dropping 8 out of that, showed a 0 blitz, and we ended up playing like a cover 2 type scheme. And again, he held the ball, and Sam was able to go try.
You had Sam spying him on that play, right? You had
Yes.
like a DN spying him.
Yeah, it was with help from others. It wasn't just, I love Sam, but I wasn't leaving Sam. I love you, Sam. But he had some help because it was zone. It's not like if it was man, it'd be a little bit guy that can maybe go get him a little bit quicker. But the zone principle there was allowed us to put Sam in that position to do it.
I guess that kind of feeds me into like D-line stuff. How important is versatility for defensive linemen in your scheme?
I just think not only in our scheme, but in all schemes these days, with the amount of offense that you get these days from people with all the RPO stuff and zone read now is just an afterthought. Everybody does it to a degree. I think the more you can do, the old saying, the better. So yeah, I want guys that can do multiple roles, multiple jobs. Because if we can leave certain groupings out there and use the different pieces in certain ways, it alleviates some of, all right, well, here they go trotting out, 6 DBs, and, well, they're only going to do this out of that. And we'll do some of the multiple packages, but you'd like to be able to have guys that can do multiple things. It just makes it harder on the offense.
Last one for you here,
Yep.
kind of tying it back to the start. We were talking about Joe Philbin and the Merchant Marine Academy. And when you were in Miami, that was where Dan Campbell was kind of getting his coaching start. That's where he met Zach Taylor in Miami. What about those two guys? I'm just curious on this. Like, what about those two guys maybe told you early on, these guys are head coaching material, and as you got to know Shane Steichen, I know only, briefly through the interview process here, what qualities does he have that tell you this guy's got what it takes to be a really good head coach?
Well, Ben Johnson was lurking around.
Yeah, he was like an offensive assistant, right? Yeah.
So I used to walk. I used to walk down. We had similar to here, but if I had a question, like I'm gonna go ask, like if the sink is leaking, I'm calling the plumber. I'm not trying to fix it, right? So if there's a question about, hey, what's quarterback looking at here? I have my thoughts. I kind of think I know. Let's go ask the quarterback coach. So Zach was the quarterback coach. Hey, Zach, what's the progression here? And that's how we really became tight. I would go down there all the time, and he'd come down for a coverage question. But yeah, I see the same similarities. Zach, Shane, two really smart people, guys that are always ahead of the curve when it comes to, adapting to a particular game plan or scheme that they want to run. Seem like they're a step ahead of the defense all the time, and I've got great respect for Shane as we went into this process, and certainly now working for him. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Lou Anarumo, the new defensive coordinator of the Indianapolis Colts. Lou, thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Big thanks to you. Big thanks to Lou Anarumo for that. I'll tell you what, my first question is, how different, personnel-wise, do you think, at this point, I know it's early in the offseason, how many new faces do we see in that defensive room?
It's a really good question.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna come down to him getting to know his players right now and evaluating how can I fit a scheme to these guys. And then, okay, well, what do we need to add to that room? Do we need a big-time playmaking cornerback? Do we need a rangy free safety? Do we need any more help on the defensive line? Do we need, what are we going to do at linebacker with EJ Speed being a free agent? A lot of questions that we're going to get answered over these next couple of weeks. I do think the one thing that Lou emphasized when he was talking to the media on Thursday last week was he really likes this defensive line. The defensive line can be the engine for this entire defense, and he said he really liked Laiatu Latu coming out last year. DeForest Buckner obviously is a stalwart there, so he's got some pieces that he likes on that defensive line. I'm curious what he does with the back end, because you got some guys who have played good football, right? Like a Nick Cross, like a Jalen Jones, obviously Zaire Franklin in that kind of back seven. Kenny Moore II, another guy he brought up, how he envisions him kind of like a Mike Hilton, who had a lot of success blitzing. Amanda Foster, our colleague at Colts.com, looked this up. Mike Hilton blitzed 178 times over, it was from 2021, through 2024. No other cornerback blitzed more than 130 times.
Interesting.
So Mike Hilton, he was just pressing that button with Mike Hilton, spamming it because Mike Hilton was good at it. I think he can do kind of the same with Kenny. Kenny's a good blitzer who we maybe haven't seen that tapped into.
Good
a
little
lot.
nugget right there.
Yeah.
You got to put that in the back pocket right there. A Lou Anarumo defense leading the league in blitzes like that from somebody like he had with Mike Hilton.
And Lou's not going to lead the league in the number of blitzes he calls, but for specific players, hey, Kenny's a good blitzer.
Yeah.
Kenny is physical. He's fast. He's instinctive. We know all these things about him. Getting him to maybe disguise if he's going to come, if he's not, a little bit more frequently than we've seen in years past, I think is going to benefit Kenny and the entire Colts defense.
Finally, when you talk about football, it's not too hard to, block and tackle. Does Anarumo bring in, hey, we led the league in missed tackles last year.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen on my watch. Well, simple, basic tackling, is that something that's going to be, don't want to lead the league again in missed tackles?
Yeah, I liked his answer about that on Thursday, too, with the local media, where he was asked about the missed tackles. And he said, he hears it a lot where, you don't hit enough in practice. You don't have enough time with the pads. He said tackling is mostly about angles. So you can work on that in a walkthrough. You don't need the pads on. You don't need the physicality of it. It's about angles and it's about hustle. And you got to have 11 guys railing to the ball if you want to be a good tackling team, because the first guy might miss. You're going up against Saquon Barkley. He's going to make the first guy miss.
Yeah. Good luck with Jonathan Taylor, too. He's that type of guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have 5 or 6 other guys who are sprinting to the ball to go bring that guy down before he turns, okay, you missed a tackle, and now you get 3 extra yards, or is it going to be 30 extra yards? So there's a lot of that, and then obviously the angle stuff that I think he's going to constantly be preaching to these guys, and I think that'll benefit him because, look, these are veterans.
Yeah.
A lot of veterans on this defense, a lot of guys who have made tackles in the NFL, who can make tackles. A fresh voice in there, I think, could probably help with that.
JJ, along the lines of the coaching hires around the league and specifically here, the linebackers for this unit with E.J. Speed, obviously Zaire Franklin. We saw what Grant Stewart did when he started a football game, 19 tackles. Linebackers leading the league in tackles. Richard Smith replaced as linebacker coach. James Betcher brought back in here, who does have history with the Colts.
Yeah, he was with Bruce Arians. He was brought on, I think, as a member of Pagano's staff.
Yep, former defensive coordinator out there as well. Yeah, when he went to Arizona.
He goes to Arizona, defensive coordinator. He goes to the New York Giants, defensive coordinator there for a couple of years. And then he slides back into being a linebackers coach for Lou Anarumo in Cincinnati for the last couple of years. I don't know if you saw what Robert Mathis tweeted. Rob tweeted that Betcher is the one who taught him everything he needed to learn about playing outside linebacker. So, Colts aren't playing a 3-4.
Right.
Betcher's not going to be coaching up, Leatu Latu and how to play with a 2-point stance as an outside linebacker. But
right.
That's pretty good praise coming from Robert Mathis right there.
Absolutely. So Lou's putting his touches on this staff. Obviously, defensive backs coach and whatnot is about to come. He's
the Colts have not finalized any of this. Right. The James Betcher is still kind of reported out there.
Fair enough.
But we'll kind of see. Hopefully, the Colts are getting a little closer to finalizing that coaching staff and getting that out there. But you wouldn't be surprised if Lou Anarumo brings some guys who he knows into those roles. And we'll kind of see where it goes from there.
Good stuff. I'm telling you what, I'm excited about this. Obviously, the talent level on the Colts defense when you're talking about the DeForest Buckners of the world, Kenny Moore, like you're talking about, Zaire Franklin.
I also want to talk about this. I think the Colts do have more talent than the Bengals had. I saw some discussion of this of people rolling their eyes of the Colts defense is no better than the Bengals in terms of talent. Trey Hendrickson is an awesome football player. I am not arguing that the Colts have anyone better than Trey Hendrickson. He's
17 and a half sacks.
In 2 straight years.
Yeah.
Guy's awesome. I think from a depth perspective, the Colts have a lot of just good players on that defense. And, maybe they don't have a Trey Hendrickson. I think DeForest Buckner is probably the closest you got to that. But you got a lot of pieces you can work with, and I don't think there are a lot of holes on this defense. I really don't. I think the right scheme can unlock some stuff for certain guys. And the back end, I thought we talked about, I think you saw strides from Jalen Jones, from Nick Cross, certain guys on the back end there that you can work with. I really think this defense has more talent. Maybe it's not, maybe you don't have the top end, obvious all-pro type guys. Zaire Franklin was the second team all-pro, but, leave it at that. There are some good players there and guys who could be great players with the right scheme and the right coaching around them. There's stuff that can be unlocked there.
Yeah, let's stay there. I like where you're at with this thing. Start from the back end. Colts need help at this. In your opinion, Colts need help at the safety position, potentially a veteran?
Yeah, you got Julian Blackmon hitting free agency.
Right.
I said it on the pod last week. I'm curious if you might see Julian retained just because he is a veteran. He does have some range back there. Colts obviously know what he went through with the shoulder last year. But, could you also see maybe a rookie come in? I keep reading that it's a pretty deep class for safeties this year. So, could go a different route there.
Yeah.
And then at corner.
There we go.
Corner is interesting because you got good play out of Jalen Jones. You got good play out of Samuel Womack, but it never felt connected. It was almost like you would have these individual games where it's like, man, like Sammy Womack had a great game or Jalen Jones had a great game, but they never really were totally together as a unit. So how does Lou Anarumo bring that together with those guys? And do you need to add a piece in there? Do you need to go say, hey, maybe we need to go get like that true number one corner? Could Juju Brent still be that guy if he's able to stay healthy? So a lot of interesting questions I think we're going to learn about the fingerprints Lou Anarumo is going to get on this defense.
Good competition always helps a team. Linebacker position. Need some help there?
And that's the most important thing. Competition is the most important thing there. Whatever.
Depending on EJ Speed and what happens with him contractually.
Zaire Franklin's going to start. Right. Zaire Franklin is in that realm of like, this guy's a really freaking good player.
Yep.
Who's going to play next to him? Is it going to be EJ Speed? Is it going to be Jalen Carlisle? Is Grant Stewart going to come back? Is someone going to come out from free agency? Is someone going to come in from the draft again? That position, that kind of will linebacker next to Z, where Zaire's going to be playing the mic, you would assume that continues forward. Are you going to bring someone in who has a different skill set than we've seen in that position? Is it going to be someone who's got to cover really well? Maybe that's Jalen Carlisle, given his background as a defensive back at Mizzou. Maybe it's someone else from free agency. That position, I think, right there. And whatever happens, I think you're going to see a really high level of competition because you have Carlisle still there.
Right, yeah. Interesting.
You bring in a guy from free agency, maybe, unless you're signing him to a 4-year contract, hey, you're going to go compete with this kid.
Right.
And let's see if that competition can make that position better at will linebacker.
JJ, go to the defensive line room for me. Let's go, interior guys, edge guys. Think the Colts are going to possibly touch up that room a little bit in the draft, possible free agency?
I think you always do. You're always trying to make that defensive line room better. The guy who I'm interested in here is, what does Samson Ebukam do? Where he's going into the final year of his contract. He obviously missed all of last year. Assuming he is back, what level of competition can he provide coming off that Achilles?
Would you take the 9.5 sacks he did 2 years ago?
You would, but also I think you would take him just pushing the rest of that room. And Samson, he's going to come back. He's not guaranteed a starting spot back. I've seen the Instagram videos he's been posting. That guy looks like a man on a mission. You should see this stuff, man. He's got like 160-pound dumbbells that he's pressing.
Like fat ones. I mean, but like
literally, like one hand has 160 pounds and the other hand has 160 pounds. And it's not like a barbell where you can kind of get under it and, it's up on a thing here and you kind of grab and you get under it. It's like he's got to get those things up on his thighs. It is insane. Go look at it when he posts the next one. That's like one of the most insane, we are not like professional athletes things I've seen.
I think I'm pretty close on this. Basically what you're telling me is Samson Ebukam is pressing JJ Stankevitz in each hand. About 160 pounds.
Yeah, that's
here,
actually about correct.
And 160 pounds here. So just think of that lifting. Lifting a grown man up like that. Yeah,
100%. We're about 10 pounds off. He's like putting me in one hand and me in the other hand to get that up. It's insane.
Oh, I love it. And
but the point there is because he's not guaranteed a starting spot back. That should push Latu. That should push Kwity Paye.
Yeah.
That'll push Tyquan Lewis. That, I think, elevates that entire room in a really healthy way.
Oh, great. So much to come, too. Don't forget the Combine. We are going to be coming at you from the Combine. A lot to go over there, obviously.
Man, that's in a month.
Yeah, I know. JJ, you're doing your backstory. You're going to do your research. You're going to talk to a lot of people at the Combine. That's going to be fun. Colts.com will have you covered on everything going up there. And some fun stuff coming up, too, in the Pro Bowl. We got some Pro Bowlers just around the corner this week. So Colts.com will have a lot of coverage.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff
on what's going on in the offseason. All right, JJ, here we go. Let's go around the NFL a little bit. Let's go around the NFL. Jags, Texans, Titans. Right. Let's stay in the AFC South. Not so much player transactions, but some movement in the AFC South when it comes to the coaching staff and the general managers as well.
Currently what I've seen on some social media stuff is that like Liam Coen has kind of been a laughingstock.
Down in Jacksonville.
Based on his debut day with the Jaguars. I just want to say this. You know what else is a laughingstock on day one? Dan Campbell.
Right.
Nick Sirianni.
Look at those.
Well, two pretty good coaches there.
That people were talking about their press conference.
Never, ever read into day one of a coach showing up and giving a press conference or being on a video. I don't care that Liam Coen maybe said Duval a little weird. The guy was a great offensive coordinator with the Buccaneers. He's probably going to do a good job with Trevor Lawrence there. Don't write off the Jaguars because the guy maybe had a couple weird moments because, well, you know what, everyone, you're going to bite kneecaps off Dan Campbell? What are you talking about? All of a sudden, he's the best coach in the NFL.
Right,
Nick Sirianni had that,
another one.
sort of weird first day. Well,
He's
the guy's
playing
been
for a
to 2
trophy.
Super Bowls in 4 years.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
None of this stuff matters.
And hey, that's their thing down there in Jacksonville. Duval. And you know what? I'm all for it. Go Colts, go. Whatever you want to say. I'm excited about it. Competition in our division here in the AFC South, led by somebody as talented as Liam Coen. I don't care about the Duvals. And you're absolutely right. Good call on that with the Sirianni and the other press conferences and biting kneecaps.
I think Jonathan Gannon's done a really good job in Arizona. And,
absolutely.
he kind of got roasted for some of the stuff that happened.
Yep.
I mean, Arizona, he's raised the level of the talent level on that team is here, and I think he's got him to here.
Right.
And, yeah, he had some moments that were kind of roasted on social media on day one, and he's doing a pretty good job there.
Good point. You said got him from here to here. Yeah. That's exactly what Liam Coen did with Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay.
Right.
And now, by the way, they have a guy who I called years ago. Maybe I'm off on this, but I think he has the ability at the time 2 years ago to be a league MVP. He's going to be dealing with Trevor Lawrence right now, and that's a scary thought for Colts fans.
It is, because Trevor Lawrence has a lot of untapped potential.
Sure.
And you get him with the right coach. Brian Thomas Jr. is an awesome football player. I would not be shocked if the Jaguars had a pretty big rebound in 2025.
I'm with you. I'm not disagreeing on that. Let's go to Houston down there. They got rid of Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator, and a former Colts coach, Chris Strausser, let go on the offensive line down there.
Yeah, their offensive line really struggled this year. They had a lot of different combinations. They had guys who were in and out who were hurt. Anytime you have a bad offensive line, it's hard to be a good play caller. Having said that, I thought you did see some concerning things from C.J. Stroud this year that maybe weren't just because of the offensive line. Maybe the line compounded it. So interesting that, Bobby Slowick was a guy who DeMeco Ryans brought over from San Francisco. He comes from that Shanahan tree. Very interested what direction they take now going forward because C.J. Stroud's a really good quarterback.
Yep.
He has the potential to be a top 5 quarterback in this league, but you got to get this offensive coordinator hire right now. Because the Texans won the division, they won a playoff game, but I think they still maybe had a disappointing season relative to expectations for that offense, which I think a lot of people thought was going to go nuclear when you got Stephon Diggs, you got Joe Mixon in there, you get year 2 with C.J. Stroud, you get Tank Dell back. Obviously, he had that horrible injury against Kansas City on Christmas. You got Nico Collins, but they took a step back. What can they do to take maybe 2 steps forward? That's going to come down to getting the OC hire right.
Right. Well, stay in that division. The Titans, interesting. Rand Carthon experience lasted a couple years.
That was a very interesting one.
Yeah, bringing in the new GM, by the way, who has the number 1 overall pick in the upcoming NFL draft.
Did you see what they said? Him and their kind of like their player personnel guy talked about how they don't want to pass on a generational talent.
Sure.
So now that makes you wonder, okay, do you think Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders is a generational talent, or do you think Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter is a generational talent?
There's those 4 names that have been tossed around a lot. That's interesting, and it is interesting because the head coach has been there before, the owner, and with Amy Strunk Adams down there, and now this new GM comes. He has to get it right. My point is this: we've seen it across the NFL the last 20 years. You hit on a quarterback. In this case, I'm talking about Will Levis. They needed somebody down there. You hit on a quarterback, everything's good. You don't hit on that quarterback, stuff becomes rocky, and we see that happening in Tennessee. But they're trying to change that, and it's kind of easy when you got the overall. No, not easy, but it's a little more comfortable when you got the number 1 overall. We're going to find out if there is a generational talent in one of those 4 that you just mentioned.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's probably what you're looking at there.
Hey, we're going to find out more. I'm talking combine because I'm excited. We're going to talk about a lot of those players' names as well. I just want to go around the NFL. Pete Carroll, your thoughts on Vegas saying, hey, we're bringing in a 73-year-old right now who knows how to win.
Love that move for Vegas.
Yeah?
I thought Pete Carroll should still be coaching. He's 73.
Right.
But man, like I talked to him a couple of years ago at the owners' meetings. I was doing just a story on Shane and just kind of like the pitfalls you run into as a first-year head coach. And Pete Carroll was, like you talk about a guy who is like, I went into that conversation not actually knowing how old he was. And I remember like looking it up. I was like, oh my God, he's 71. He comes off as a guy who's in his mid-50s.
A lot of energy, man.
Yeah, a lot of energy. Yeah. One of the smartest people to come through the NFL in the last 20 years. a guy who I think is going to do a great job in Vegas.
Feel bad for Antonio Pierce, but somebody like Pete Carroll out there and Tom Brady and the new ownership group out there, so a lot of stuff happening around. Let's keep going. Aaron Glenn and the Jets, I'm bringing him up because I remember Jim Irsay telling me he was so impressed when he brought in Aaron Glenn here before he hired Shane Steichen, and Aaron Glenn kept sticking in my head. And obviously, we've seen what he's done in Detroit, but he gets the job going back to a place which is tough for a head coach in New York, and also he has that thing on his resume. Hey, I played for this team as well as coached them.
I think it's important for the Jets to have a guy who knows that building.
Yeah.
Where they have not made the playoffs since 2010.
14 or something? Yeah,
14 straight years.
Yeah.
If anyone can do it there, it's probably Aaron Glenn.
Yeah, I love that hire for him. Okay, Schottenheimer, which is interesting. Brian Schottenheimer, hired as the head coach of Dallas. Don't forget, guys, in the room right now, he was here. He was on this coaching staff, and now he finally got his first gig as an NFL head coach, and it was with Jerry Jones at his side when he introduced everybody right there and said, hey, it's a big risk hiring a guy who doesn't have head coaching experience, but we're here, and that's what we're doing.
He's got to fix a 30-year drought.
Yeah.
They have not made the conference championship in 30 years.
Ooh.
Which you'd think for the Dallas Cowboys that would be.
I wouldn't say that. If you asked me that at a trivia night, I'd say no way.
Yeah.
They've been there in that 30 years.
I think it's double the next longest NFC team, which is the Bears, I think.
All right, Jerry, he's trying to get it fixed. We've talked about, what about Ben Johnson? That's an interesting one. Going to Chicago, got some talent over there, coming from the offensive coordinator position of the Lions, who've had so much success offensively the last couple of years. What do you think of that one?
I mean, look, I was in Chicago for 4 years as part of that media corps. That is a hornet's nest.
Yeah.
You gotta have success early, and then you gotta sustain it, because now you got Caleb Williams there. Can you get number one level play out of Caleb Williams when, oh, by the way, Jaden Daniels, the guy who was taken second, who you didn't even bring into your building for a visit, which, by the way, would be completely revisionist history to criticize the Bears for that, but it's something that, guess what, they're getting criticized for in Chicago. The guy made the NFC Championship.
Right.
So the stakes could not be higher for the Chicago Bears, for Ben Johnson going into that job. But look, everything that I've read about him, everything that you see about him is that he can handle that. The guy is a whiz in terms of what he can bring in terms of as being a schemer. So I'm going to be keeping the close tabs on that one, even though we don't play the Bears for another couple of years. But man, I like that fit. I'm very interested in how it goes.
That's going to be something. And speaking of the Bears, while we're here, Schottenheimer, and it's just been reported, this isn't, I don't think
Flus.
Flus, going back to be a defensive coordinator. That connection started here. It had to have, right?
Look, Matt Eberflus is a really good defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I think he knows what he's doing. Even you saw last year, and even sort of this year before the wheels kind of came off, the Bears had a really well put together defense. They were well coached. And that's what Matt Eberflus does. He's going to have a defense that plays 11 as one. They're going to be, what's his whole thing? Assignment, alignment, technique. They're going to be physical. That's a great hire for Dallas.
Excellent. Now, we'll just we spoke about it briefly, I believe, last week. But Mike Vrabel, as a football fan, I like that. I like that story. Winning the championship, to having the career that he did in New England, going outside of the New England tree, coaching, having success in Tennessee.
He never coached for Belichick.
Yeah, now he's come back in, and he's the guy. I just like the hire for football fans. I think that's a good fit.
Yeah, and I kind of like some of the stuff they've done with their staff too.
All right,
to build around Drake May. Drake May's a really good player.
Wow,
I was so
just
impressed
talking
with
about him this morning. My gosh, of
Yeah.
all things, we were talking about Drake May, and that I always comes back to a guy will remain nameless, but always said, I never forget it. Just said, you want Andrew Luck? Here he is. He's in North Carolina right there when he was coming out. So high praise for him. And yeah, what goes in, things get a lot easier when you got a guy that was so much upside like Drake May has with Mike Vrabel coming in.
Yeah, they're a team that, man, if they get, I'm kind of worried they're going to get Travis Hunter and turn him into just like a weapon on both sides of the ball for Drake May and then for getting the ball back to Drake May.
Right.
So we'll see where that goes.
Let's stay there. You think that'll happen? Think he's that guy? Think he's going, hey, I'm going to give you 20 plays on defense and I may give you 35 on offense?
Or you flip it around.
Yeah? 35 on D, maybe 20 on O?
Yeah, Travis Hunter's awesome.
Yeah,
that guy's an awesome football player.
You got to put players on.
Yeah.
Okay, JJ Stankevitz, I want you to go on record right now and
let's do
say
it.
that the New Orleans Saints have not hired a head coach up to this point because they are hiring Steve Spagnuolo of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Ooh.
What do you think?
I would be surprised if they did that.
Fair enough. No?
A lot of the stuff
like
I've
Kellen
seen
Moore?
seems
What
to
do you
be
like?
Kellen Moore or Mike McCarthy there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike McCarthy sliding right in from Dallas to New Orleans. Okay. Gonna find out about it. All right.
Hold on. Mike McCarthy's a good coach.
Yeah, heck of a
Mike,
coach.
you put his resume up against a lot of the guys who are considered the best
Seen
coaches
it.
in the league.
He's right there.
He's right there.
Yeah.
He's right there.
And then to have Jerry have that sort of veteran leadership and a guy who knows how to win, and then give it to a guy who's been a lifelong coach. Obviously, the blood ties. His dad, Marty Schottenheimer, knows how to win
did
games.
it with Jason Garrett, right?
Yeah.
So Schottenheimer's kind of similar to Jason Garrett.
Love it. All right.
yeah.
Well, we just bouncing around the NFL and the transactions, which we love. Colts.com has the latest of what's happening on the field as well as off. JJ Stankevitz and Lara Overton always bringing you the latest, and a nice reminder, the Combine, man. We're going to have a lot of great stuff down at the Combine.
And next week is going to be Hall of Fame announcements, too. We'll find out if Adam Vinatieri and Reggie Wayne get in.
Come on, Reg. Come on, Adam. That's it. A lot of stuff going on, which brings me to this time of year, the celebration of the NFL. My question is, don't give me a winner. I don't want the Super Bowl pick or anything yet. I just want to know, were you surprised at all the way that it turned out with KC, obviously beating Buffalo and KC, and then we saw what Philly did, just dismantling Washington. But, JJ, my first question is, did Josh Allen get the first down?
Ooh.
Watch yourself. It could be fined.
Well, one of the line judges said he got it, and the other said he didn't.
Ooh.
And then on replay, after it was called on the field that he didn't, they said he didn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we got KC and
by the way, I did call KC versus Philly last week on the pod.
Attaboy. Love it. I know it's I mean, it wasn't a big stretch, but I'll give you that.
No, it wasn't a big stretch, but it's kind of what America wanted to see the other matchup.
Right.
So,
and I'm just saying this right now. I'm not going to tell you who I think is going to win, but what I like about it is the score will be in the 30s. The score will be maybe one team
about that?
with the. I'm just saying.
I don't know.
I'm just saying we got a couple of teams that like to score points, and we're going to see. The last time they played a couple of years ago, they put up the 30s. But I know things are different.
Spags versus Vic Fangio.
I know that Philly defense.
I don't know if we're getting into the 30s on that.
We'll see. A lot happening. Okay, we're going to close out with this. I've got you going to this event. Not only that, I've got you wearing face paint. The Royal Rumble is in Indianapolis this Saturday. I think you're bringing I'm just guessing here. I think you're bringing the kids out there. Maybe have a headband on, maybe a little face paint right on the rail as the wrestlers are going to the ring. That's what's happening for the Stankevitz this weekend?
Now we're going to the Pacers game that night.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Sorry to burst your bubble on that one.
It's not a burst. That's a good call. You're going as a family, or you're going solo?
As a family. Yeah,
I love that.
Taking the kids to the Pacers game. Yeah,
as a family.
They've been my kids. They're 5, and they're starting to weigh a little bit more. You know, they're growing boys. But they want me to do. We have this little mini hoop in a room in our house, and they want me to pick them up and let them dunk.
Got it.
While announcing a bunch of players.
Got it.
So it's pick them up and it's here's Miles Turner and here's Tyrese Halliburton, and then they want me to keep going, and I'm I'm going all the way down the Pacers roster, and I'm pulling Ben Shepherd out here, and throw me a lifeline.
Right, right. You're going to old Reggie Miller for who, Dad? Who?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Here comes Travis Best. So I need to get really deep down the Pacers roster,
right?
So I can keep it going because they don't want to stop with it.
Saturday,
but I think maybe we'll learn some stuff on Saturday.
Saturday night, and they're playing
the Atlanta Hawks.
All right, the Hawks are in town taking on the Pacers. JJ Stankevitz will be there. Folks and fans, if you see him sitting down in the arena, go up and talk to him about the Colts. Ask him the questions that you want.
Please do.
He's that type of guy. He's a friendly sort.
I've been to a couple Pacers games where I've had people stop me and say, hey, like the podcast, like your work, all that stuff. So that's nice. I appreciate anyone who says that.
And I'm telling you what, you might find out stuff off the record when a mic is in front of your face that you find out. So maybe not. Hey, I appreciate it.
Don't put me in that spot.
No, it won't. All right, no Royal Rumble for JJ, but the Pacers are there, and while we're in the offseason, we are big Pacer fans, so you guys keep doing your thing. I appreciate it. Anything else on your mind?
No. Let's actually we've hit the sim to end part of the offseason where I'm just all right, let's get through the Super Bowl, and now I want to start learning about how this Colts team is going to change in 2025. We got the DC here.
Yep.
You're talking about the Combine. I'm that's in a month. That's when you really start to learn what things are going to look like. So we got maybe a month before things really pick up here.
Let's have some fun for a month, but then it goes to 100 miles an hour. Kevin Connors behind the camera today. Appreciate your help. And thanks to all you people that are watching on the YouTube network as well as listening on the Colts audio network. JJ Stankevitz, I appreciate the time. Thanks for letting me pick your brain a little bit. It's going to be a fun offseason because this team is going to change a little bit. And I'm telling you what, we're not far away. That's been the mantra around here, not far away. And we saw that in the last couple of years as well. But it's going to be a different one in 2025. But it starts at the Combine. Can't wait for that. That's in a month. Again, Colts.com has all the latest. Keep checking back and seeing what's going on. Have a great week. Have a great weekend. Good luck to everybody going to the Royal Rumble and the Pacer fans on Saturday night. Folks, we'll do it every week for JJ Stankevitz and Lara Overton. I'm Jeffrey Gorman. We'll talk to you then.